Beautiful people, welcome back to another episode of Who Can Relate. We're back, we are rolling, moving right along, and I'm excited for today's episode because if you are single and or dating, you're gonna want to take notes on this one. I have my friend Keilani on, and her and I, every time we talk and we get together, we always have these amazing conversations, and I'm like, look, I need to have you on the show. We gotta dissect this in front of the people. And so we did that, and I'm excited for you guys to hear it. We cover a lot of different things, from dealing with breakups, abuse, whether it's mental, physical, emotional, etc. We talk about repairing instead of repeating in relationships, and we talk about doing the work prior to getting into a relationship. So it's pretty good. Okay, if you are new here, my name is Justin Davis. This show is all about people discovering their higher self through adversity, vulnerability with a big underline under that word, and self-love. If you are not new here and you are a regular and you've been rocking as a part of the community, I say thank you, thank you, thank you, and full gratitude to you. Okay, today's quote that I chose is gonna hit deep, so everyone pay attention, everyone listen. Here it goes. We chase from our wounds, but we choose from our worth. I'll say it again for the people in the back. We chase from our wounds and we choose from our worth. So let that marinate, let it resonate for a little bit, and really think about and be honest with yourself about which one are you doing right now. Are you chasing from your wounds that you haven't healed from, whether it's childhood, past relationships, any other traumatic experience in your life? Or are you choosing who you want in your life from your worth, and being very stern on your worth and on your boundaries? Just think about that one. Okay, today's intentions, again, are just to help people who are going through the struggles of dating. If anyone's out here like the struggle's real, I can't find anyone, where are they at, etc., this one is for you. So, without further ado, sit back, relax, and if you are watching, please like, subscribe, and share on YouTube. And if you're listening, and especially if you're on Apple Podcasts, please leave a rating and a review. I can't wait to hear from each and every one of you about how you like this episode. So let's get into it. Okay, Miss Keilani.
Yes.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thanks for coming on. Thanks for making the time.
Of course.
I appreciate it.
Of course.
I'm excited about today's episode, as we always have like these pre-episodes, I feel like, just impromptu whenever we're together. And I was like, save whatever we have right now.
I know.
Come on the show.
and we'll say it again.
Yeah, we'll say it again.
Right.
So actually, the last time I saw you, we were talking about what I talked about heavily last week. So, by the way, Keilani is the source for me from that quote of men only marry when they're ready. They don't marry the ones that they truly love.
It was a tweet that I saw.
So a tweet. Yeah. Sorry.
But yes, I did bring it up.
Yeah. For the record.
Yes.
So, and I had Duke, Jalan, Omar on from Nice and Neat, and they disagree, but then also can understand where that statement was coming from, and I actually agreed with it. And I do think that timing has so much to do with why men in particular decide to settle down, because we've all had our fair share of ones that got away or right girl wrong time. I just wasn't ready, and a part of that, by the way, and we talked about this when we were together, is I think it's a fear of us getting hurt as men. So like we want to take control of it.
It is a control thing.
Yeah. So it's like, I mean, we could have been,
right,
but I just, I wasn't ready, bro.
Exactly. But what does not ready even mean? I always say that, like, the one who got away, that's more of a male experience, in my opinion. In my opinion.
Okay.
Just because there's not one woman that I know personally who has that experience, who's ever been like, wow, there's a man that got away. Like, not one. But
why and how?
I'm not sure. I think also at the same time, it's the approach to dating in general.
Okay.
I think, I don't want to be like spokeswoman for all women, but like, at least in my experience, I look at it as an experience. I don't look at it as something to win or something to control or something to show off. Right. I look at it as a partnership. Like this is we're bonding two lives together, and like there's so much that goes into that, you know. So there's accountability, there's compromise, there's all of this, you know. And I feel like that's not at all we do. Yeah, exactly.
I'm just sitting here thinking like,
I know.
No.
It's not.
No, it's not it.
It's not. And a lot of times, you know, it is I get it though, because I mean, there are some people who do play into, you know, why wouldn't you want something this good looking on your arm? Or why wouldn't you want someone who does this on like as a part of you or something like that? I get it. Yeah. I get it. It's not right, but I get it. I understand.
Yeah. I can't even, it is what it is. And unfortunately, you know, it takes us so long to even get to what the level you're just talking about.
Sure.
And I'm sure for women as well, right? But definitely for men. I mean, I've always said, I think that 30 click for men is, when I say a game changer, that's like an understatement.
Is that something that's like an unspoken male?
I think so.
Like rule, like 30 years old kind of thing?
Rule, not necessarily. I think it's just like this, it's not really even by choice. It's like one day everything makes sense and we stop bullshitting and we stop our games and we stop the gaslighting and the manipulation. We realize that we were raised by women. You know what I mean? It's just like we have sisters. It's just
there's not like an experience though that happens. There's not like a breakup or like maybe a conversation that you have. There can
be. Okay. Yeah, there can be.
But the timing is still really important.
Yeah. Okay. So for me, actually, it was 30 plus breakup. And it was just like whoosh. I mean, like an intervention for myself.
And it was at the same year.
Yeah, like almost the same day. It was it was wild. Yeah. So it was a huge moment for me. But I mean, I've had not bad breakups necessarily, but I've had long-term relationship breakups where they hurt and they took a while. Yeah. This click was different this time. And so that's why, back to that quote, I was like, for me, I got really lucky because it was timing for me and then Shay. Right. So, I mean, I'm very blessed. But again, I'm sure a lot of men, and I've actually, since you told me that, I've talked to quite a few of my guys, and I was like, don't lie to me. Right. Be honest.
Be honest. Like,
and even today, my barber, I was like, bro, I'm going to hit you with something.
Did you ask Shay?
Yeah. And she said that could be that way for women as well, which I didn't even think about. Because I always thought that for women, especially when it comes to settling down, it's so much love.
Usually it can be, but also, I mean, women also have a biological clock that we have to think about.
Exactly. So And so for men, it's like timing. And am I ready to finally settle down, aka commit to just one, again, monogamy.
Well, what is settling down? Settling down looks different for everybody though. Every man, I feel like.
Okay.
Every heterosexual cisgender male.
There you go. Yeah, who's into monogamy. Yes. Settling down, I guess, when I say I just mean like being able to commit to one woman.
Sure.
Right.
Okay.
So and that it's a whole different story.
It is.
But nonetheless, you know, I was asking all these guys, and I think everyone said that they agree with that statement.
Really?
And one of my guys is engaged, who I asked, you know, so they're like, yeah.
And you know what? It's sad too, like not necessarily to say that whoever answered yes to that question isn't with the love of their life. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I am saying though, as a woman, you know, if you are on the receiving end, it feels like a very selfish approach to intimacy from the guy's part, because it's like, why didn't you know, take advantage of someone who you loved the most in your life at the time? Yeah. You felt like, I'm just not ready, so I'm gonna risk losing the love of my life, you know, just because I don't think that I'm ready. But when are you ever really ready? Like, when are you ever ready for anything?
So let's define ready.
Right. But I feel like that's subjective to each person though.
It is.
It is. Because what I do feel like though, there are certain things that people should address before they're actually like intimately committed in a monogamous relationship long-term with other people. So like addressing your demons, being really dedicated to the work, you know, and I mean, that's the biggest thing, at least for me. It's the biggest non-negotiable. Because I know that I've dated men before who like, I've maybe inspired them to start that journey. And I'm thankful for that. I'm very thankful that I've been able to be, you know, like that.
Like part of the process.
I'm thankful that I've been able to touch someone's life in a way that like it sparks that journey for them, because I'm so dedicated to it. Sure. I'm thankful that opened their eyes. Yeah. However, that's very fragile ground to build a relationship off of. Yep. Because now you did that because of me, not because of you. And like, I remember, for example, when I was in high school, one of my old best friends, she ended up dating a man who was like very, very, very religious. And she identified as atheist at the time, as long as I had known her. Of course, when they started dating, she started practicing his religion. And it seemed great. You know, they had a long relationship, a few years. And then they broke up and she went right back to her atheist ways, which however you choose to identify is fine.
Sure.
I just think that, again, it was built off of very fragile ground, that religious aspect of it, you know? So I would hope that people can become dedicated to that work for themselves because they want to be as good of a person they can be, to be the best partner, to be the best father, to be the best friend, you know,
the best version of themselves.
Exactly, in every area.
Yeah, I always say, like, you know, I have consultations with women and I've seen the comments and the reviews and all these things. And even just out and about, I've had talks with women and they're always like, how does a guy get to being quote unquote ready? Right. And the first quick answer is he has to want it. You can't force this on him. You can't do it for him. And even if you did, the other thing I was going to say is he has to genuinely 100% be committed to this.
Exactly.
Because that's him creating his toolbox. That's him knowing what to do, when to do, and how to do it. Not like, what did Keilani say the last time I was in this? And that equals sustainability.
Exactly.
And that also alleviates, correct me if I'm wrong, the pressure then from you.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Of course. Because then I know I can trust the fact that you're in the right mind space or headspace to be able to make those decisions. Because I can't do that for you.
100%.
Because I have my own path that I'm working on.
And rightfully so.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, you know, the goal is, right, is to come together, to grow together.
Exactly.
As, you know, so anyways, all this to say, that all didn't happen until 30.
That is crazy.
For your boy, and I think for a lot of men. And you know, it's, and I will say this too, for anyone under 30, and whether you're a guy or a girl, things are different now. I mean, I'm 35, and when I was in my 20s, you know, we didn't have this.
Yeah.
We didn't have free game.
You know, all this, I mean, just everything, right?
There's so many, there's so many resources to the point now, like if you,
I don't even feel like it's resources that we honestly, I firmly believe that like the way that social media is like designed, it's, we were never supposed to know that this many people existed. Like we were never supposed to know that like there are this many people around us because it's on a platform where we feel like everything is readily accessible. Yeah. This person could be like 3 million miles away. Sure. But readily accessible to you on an app. Right. You know, so we think that these are options for us because of the way that it's designed. And it's like, no, this is like a human being, you know? I think I mentioned this to you before. I made a video about this on TikTok. I started my TikTok career. Get it. My little mental health TikTok. I was just basically saying that like there was a psychology class that I took and my professor had mentioned a study that was conducted that basically talked about how your mind can't tell the difference between scrolling through a social media app like TikTok, Instagram, whatever, or even a dating app actually, and scrolling through like a shopping website, like a mobile shopping website. So when you're scrolling through the shopping website, this could be like Nordstrom or whatever, you're like, I like this, add to cart, or I don't like this anymore, we're gonna delete it, you know? Oh God. But the way that the apps are designed, when you're scrolling, you're like, I like that, that's an option. Like, let me DM that person, let me talk to that person. Again, readily accessible for you. But that's a human being. Like it's not a product, you know, but it goes into like why people act the way that they do when it comes to, I mean, social media is a whole other. Yeah. It's a whole other beast. Yeah. I mean, there are some pros to it, right? Yeah, of course. That's how I met Shay. Oh, so you know what I mean? So there's one of my exes on there too. Yeah. So there is hope, right? Yeah. But to your point, I mean, that's very true. I think at the end of the day, when you have these readily accessible at your fingertips, all I have to do is slide into the DM or whatever, and now we're talking. Right. You know, it's wild to think about that. Right. And I think if you're not intentional with what you're looking for, it's extremely dangerous. Absolutely. Because it can take you in different directions you didn't even know you wanted to be in, or whatever the case is. So, but also there's like a missing like physical component of it too, because you really don't. You get to see a curated version of them, you know, the highlight reel. Yeah. Even if you're on just like FaceTime every day, they get to see what you want them to see. Exactly. But when you're in person, they get to see what you don't want them to see. Exactly. And those are the things that really like bound people together. Sure. In like long-term relationships, in my experience, is like you get to see like the flaws in other people, and like you're like, oh, hey, you're human like me too. Yeah. You know. So those are certain things that I appreciate about more like in-person connections over like internet ones. Yeah, so you're old school. I wouldn't say I'm old school always, but
okay. In this regard,
yeah, in this way,
old school.
I think that if you're using it healthily, if you're intentional, it's fine either way. So
yeah,
but it's important to know.
Yeah, Shay and I talk about that. When people are like, "Oh, how'd you meet?" Shay like cringes every time, and I'm like, "Honey, it is what it is at this point.
That's our story.
Yeah, it's our story. We're sticking to it. You know, what do you want to say? Like farmers only? Like shit, it is what it is." And but she's so old school, and so am I. You know, in a perfect world, I guess it'd be just bumping into each other and certain, you know, but it is what it is. It's not the world we live in. It's not the world we live in. Exactly.
And aren't you thankful that we don't live in that world, because you would have never met her?
Yes. Yeah. Correct. See? Yeah. I mean, I'm very happy with our journey, and I've embraced it. You should be. And thankfully, that's where I'm at now. You know, but it wasn't always like this. Of course. And and there's a lot of relationships where, you know, aside from the lessons learned and taking accountability and all that, I realize, and that's, you know, primarily what we'll be talking about today, is dating for potential. And staying in a relationship, I guess, for potential. A lot of people can relate.
I can relate.
And maybe a lot of people are currently there. So we're gonna try to, you know, give our 2 cents here. Yeah. Do you want to start it off?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. I think that almost every single person I know has or can relate to that, whether it was them or vice versa. And I think I initially started to say that I thought that this was kind of only like a woman's experience with the man. Like, I stayed with him because I saw his potential. Okay. Because in my experiences with some of my girlfriends, they were saying that, like, we kind of came to the conclusion, I should say, and I don't want to make this blanket statement, but usually that, like, men date from a place of like, I like you for who you are right now. Like, I want you right now, like what you are right now. But for women, it's like, oh man, like, he kind of fits in these boxes. I can totally see how he could grow into this. I could definitely see how he could, like, blossom into this. Maybe he's on that path right now. I can totally see it, you know? Okay. That's the type of, like, potential. Or maybe we're dating and I'm like, oh my gosh, no, you have these, you know, sparks and little moments of this greatness. Let's just get you to a place where you're doing that all the time.
Consistently.
And it's exactly. But it's like, you can't do that. You need to, what it is right now is who you need to date.
Sure.
So
the reality and accepting it.
Right.
You know, I just thought of this when you were saying about how men are saying, I want you right now, and women are more so open to possibilities, right? I'm going to venture to say, I think men do that because of our ego is so fragile. We can't afford to take the risk of our investment.
Risk is something that is so difficult for those ego-driven men.
Right?
I will tell you.
And also, we can't afford the risk of putting in all this time, all this effort, energy, our heart on the line, only to get hurt, or only for it not to come to fruition the way we had thought and planned it on it being. I don't think our egos can handle it.
I agree 100%, because I think that men in general, and even society, plays a big, there's so many reasons to this, why I feel like this, but I feel like a lot of men fear being hurt because they've never been given the safe space to do so, to be hurt publicly, even in private, you know, with even some of their closest friends. It's something that's very, very frowned upon culturally, societally, between families. I mean, for so many reasons. So I get it. I understand. Yeah. However, that is such a key component to finding, like, a long-term love. Right. And I think that that's something that's, you could miss out, you know.
You will miss out.
You will miss out. Yeah.
It's almost a guarantee. It's inevitable. And I think, you know, if there's a guy listening or watching, like, how do I cross that line? Right. You know, how do I step into that side? And I would just say, use your discernment, number one, right? Yep. Don't just try this with anybody. And number two, understand that there's a win-win here. Yeah. Right. And I've used this analogy quite a bit, but if anyone's new here, so the win is the obvious win is it works out. Right. When you are able to tap into your vulnerability, be transparent, be open to possibly being hurt, rejected, whole nother thing, the fragile ego. The win is that it works out, right? Exactly. The other side of it, the other win is, even if it doesn't, at least you know you're capable of doing that.
And also, like, I can honestly say that every time it's never worked out with me and someone, I've grown so much. Yeah. I literally have grown so much. And, like, I'm so thankful for the woman that I am right now. I literally have surpassed whatever expectation I even had for myself as a little girl. And I always say throughout every experience, even if it's like losing a job or losing, you know, something like an opportunity or something like that, losing a friend, you know, I've always been able to grow in a way where I'm like, man, I'm like amazed at this woman that I'm looking at right now, you know? So I always look at it like that. Of course, I mean, it is painful. It doesn't take the pain away,
right?
You know? But that is scary though.
But you brought up a great point. Like, we aren't conditioned. We're not built for that.
Sure.
We're not built with like, I remember I said this to Shay one time. I was like, when's the last time you ever heard a man say, "You hurt my feelings"?
Never.
And she was like, I don't know.
I don't think I've ever heard a man say that.
When's the last time you heard a man say like, "Oh wow, like I'm really sad"?
Yeah, I've never heard. I think one time I only saw it on Twitter.
Okay.
And it wasn't it wasn't one of my friends.
You know what I mean? And on top of this, like, if the man who's the gaslighter, the manipulator, is like using this, you know, bait, if you will, for the feeding, that's a different story. But for the ones who are just wanting to be honest with how they feel but don't know how, right? That safe space. I feel for them. Yeah. And like you said, you will miss out on really good opportunities, whether it's romantic relationships, friendships, even probably family relationships as well. And so I think it's extremely important for spaces like this, for other spaces, you know, to tap into, to try to learn what works for you, right? What works for me may not work for, and vice versa.
But that's why you date. That's why you date. Because how are you ever going to know what you want or don't want, you know?
Sure.
Even if it was a terrible relationship, you know, I don't wish those experiences on anyone. Yeah. But, you know, you learn exactly like, I always say, like, whenever I end things with like men in my past, I'm always like, thank you so much for showing me what I do want in the future.
You tell them that?
I've told some of my exes that, yeah.
That's a jab.
Why?
That's a jab.
No, I say I'm thankful that you're showing me some things that I want in the future. No, why is that bad?
That hurts.
Why? Oh, why? Because they think like, okay, it's not me.
Right? Imagine if I was like, this isn't really working out, Keilani.
Okay, no, I didn't do it at the breakup.
You know, but I want to say thank you because now I'll be better prepared for the night. I understand your intention.
I mean, yeah. I mean, like, usually it didn't happen with every ex, number one. Number two, it was mutual agreement. Okay. So
it was received well.
It was received well, yes. Right. We're still friends. We're cordial.
But okay, so let's talk about, you know, this dating for potential and relationships, you know, staying in them for the potential. What has been your experience with both, and what were some of the things that you created as far as boundaries, wherewithal, just assurance and awareness into saying, you know what, this is just potential. This isn't reality. This like, you know, believe a person for how they show up because that is who they really are. Yeah. What does that all look like for you? And yeah.
I think so anyone who really knows me, you know this, I had dated someone who was just heavily abusive in every way. I mean, physically, yes, but emotionally, physically, mentally, just even financially.
Wow. Financially abusive? What does that mean?
There are ways that, like, when we were living together, so without getting into details about the situation, overseeing a lot of my finances to the point where, like, it was...
He was?
Yes. Okay. And to the point where, like, money has been hidden, things like that, you know, and only given to me when I'm, like, able to, there's a lot that goes into it. But just know that abuse can be, you know, lots of different ways, yes. But I definitely will say that at least with that specific relationship, I 100% stayed for the potential that I saw in him. And that's a little bit more of an extreme example, but I think it does give some kind of context. Sure. Because for me, I was at a place in my life where all I wanted was love. And like, I didn't care who, I was just like, I just want love. It just so happened to be him. I liked him. He liked me. Let's go for it. And then we dated. Everything was perfect at first. Perfect. Like usually how it starts off. It's like the cycle of abuse. But it ended up turning into, I saw the red flags, but I completely looked past them because, and there's that joke that goes around that's like, you know, the red flags look like Six Flags. But I just was like, okay, but he's still my boyfriend, so who cares, you know? So then I looked past that. There were even times where he wanted to break up with me because he knew things were getting very bad, and I didn't want him to. So I, again, totally wanting to stay with him for the potential, knowing it was bad, you know, and of course it ended up getting to the point where it was really severe. But I do think that for me, I played a part in it because I, number one, didn't know what I wanted going into it. I didn't know what where I was going into it either. And I think that I also was approaching relationships as I want a boyfriend instead of this is a partnership, just like we talked about. It's that, you know, we're compromising on things. We're bringing two lives together, you know, and also vice versa too, you know. So I think that those are certain things from my end and that experience. And I think that a lot of people can relate to wanting just that one person to grow, because we see these little spurts of happiness and little like, well, you gave me roses that one time, like why don't you do that all the time? And it's like, no, but you have to look at the full picture of who the person is, not just their highlight reel or something like that, you know.
Yeah, you know, the potential thing is really tough. I've learned this from, again, consultations. I've learned this from Enjoy the Podcast, and I've learned it from Who Can Relate, where it's more so for women than men. I think, you know, back to the ego thing and how fragile it is. And we just, in our minds, it's like we can't afford to take risks.
Sure.
It's just wild to think about, sadly. But I will say that, you know, I've always said this. You need to believe people for who they are.
Every single part of who they are, though.
Not
just the good, not just the bad either.
Right. Yeah. And I think you mentioned the red flags things and Six Flags. But, you know, a lot of the, when you can see them for red, and I know like Shay would probably attest to this too, it all starts with your self-worth and your value, you know, and how your insecurities could be fed, I guess, if you will. But then also, like, you know, I think of like the avoidant and anxious attachment styles. Absolutely. How they go back and forth, right? The anxious person needs the reassurance, and the avoidant needs you to need them. So then it's like this just vicious cycle.
It is a vicious cycle.
And and I feel for these people, because it's frustrating, it's hard, and it could also cause damage long term.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So I just think in the end, believe them for what they're showing you.
The full circle.
Good or bad, to your point. And I just think if they're, you know, but I'll change and yeah.
See, my biggest thing with that is that, you know, people's patterns will always tell you more about them than anything else will. So like, you can believe their mistakes. Yeah. Everyone's human. People make mistakes, but you have to believe their patterns more. Yeah. You have to, because if you don't, then you're again getting caught up in the potential. You're getting caught up in the every now and thens, and you know, once in a blue moons or something, you know. And I came across this video recently, and this girl was talking about how she said, like, the bar has been so low in her dating history. And like, she just went on a date, and she was like, you know, this man was like thankful to the waitress. And she remembers like going home. She was like, yeah, the date was okay. I didn't really like care for him too much, but like, oh my gosh, he was so nice to the waitress. And she was like talking to her friend. Her friend is like, is that it?
Standard, girl.
Right, exactly. Are you sure? Like, is that really it? But you don't realize those kinds of things if you're not looking at the full picture. Yeah. You know, you're only looking at that. Well, he's nice to the waitress. Sure. But it's like, okay, but he didn't open your door. He didn't pay for your meal. Right. He didn't, you know, check to make sure that you went home, or maybe he dropped you off and didn't make sure you got in the door. Like, you know what I mean? Like little things like that, however you decide, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's reference point.
Right. Exactly.
It's all back to reference point. Whatever and this is great, actually, whatever your ex did or didn't do will show up in your next relationship. Yeah. So for example, like my ex, I remember when we were first dating, I used to always, you know, open the door for her, and I'll never forget, she was like blown away. And I'm like, what? This is like basic etiquette.
Yeah, it is.
What are you used to?
Courting people properly.
And I was like, oh, and I learned a lot. Yeah. I will say this. I'll go as far as, okay, you can, whenever I do that, that's me thinking before I speak. So I'm still going to say, you can actually learn a lot about someone even through sex and how they have sex.
Yes, you can.
Either they're making love.
Yep.
Or they're not.
And you know.
Right? You know what their comfort zone is. You know what they're used to, right? And that will tell you a lot about what their reference point is and who they were dating and how those relationships were, toxic, healthy, etc. And so even again, when it comes to mannerisms and etiquette, just like pay attention to stuff like that. When you see, you know, he was nice, but he was great to the waiters. Like, that is a basic standard.
I also think that people should pay attention to how they treated the people before you and how they talk about them now.
Great point.
I think that is incredibly important, because you have to look at, like, how is this person as a human being? Not just because if they can do this, like if they can be this terrible person to the waitress, to an ex, to a family member, they have that capability to do it to you too. It just depends on the situation, you know, and they might not right now and they might not ever, but they do have that in them, you know. 100%. So you have to look at people for every single part of who they are. So I think that's a really telling thing to look at how they treated people before you, whether they were dating or not, or maybe just a fling, or maybe it was just somebody that they were like casually having sex with or something like that. Or if I always say, especially pay attention to how they treat people who can't do anything for them. Or people who they find unattractive. That's a big one.
Explain that a little bit more.
So I feel like a lot of times, so rejection, okay, it's one thing. Whenever people go out and if someone like, for example, if I don't find a man attractive and he tries to talk to me, I'm not going to like dog him in front of everybody and be like, boy, don't you see me, I would never do that.
Right.
I might joke about it with my friends later, you know, if he's like super persistent or something, but like in the moment, I'll just be like, no, thank you. You know, it's just, but I would never like embarrass him in front of other people just because I find him unattractive. You know, I feel like it's very ego driven if you do. So I think that's like very telling.
Kind of,
So if you happen to like, so for men, if they try to get at a girl and she does reject him, and then he takes it in a way of like, okay, well you were ugly anyways.
Right. You must be.
It's like, okay, you.
Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
ego driven, you know?
Yeah. I was going to ask you something too. And I want to hear your thought on this. Okay. So, back to how they treat people. I think I've given this on Enjoy the Podcast before. No, it was on Who Can Relate when I had Los and Jared on. And I said, you know, a couple dates in, let's say like, don't quote me. I'm just going to throw out a number. Let's say on the 8th date.
Okay.
I think it's advantageous for anyone to ask, how was it with your ex?
Okay.
How was your last relationship? How did it end? Now, if you get a guy that's like, I don't want to, come on, I don't want to talk about that right now. You know, if he's real defensive or agitated, it's like, oh shit.
Right. Yeah.
Or if it's like, yeah, you know, it was mutual ending and right. It's different.
It is very different. It's very telling.
It's very telling.
Very telling.
Exactly.
That's true.
So,
I agree to an extent.
Okay. What you got?
I just think, I agree if, as long as you're coming from a place of, I genuinely want to know how you respond to this question about your ex, because I think if you're trying to fish to see whether or not they're still talking, or you know what I mean?
Oh
like,
yeah, no.
Then don't do it.
No. I wasn't even thinking that.
Yeah,
I was thinking like just to really get to know them.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, to your point of if you're asking them about someone who they can't gain anything from, or the attractiveness and so on and so forth, or someone who's no longer in their life, you can learn a lot.
Exactly.
So
of course, I agree.
Yeah. So 8th date, ask about their last relationship. Okay. So I also want to go over this, and we always, I appreciate these conversations. Side note, like I really do.
No, me too.
We always flow. It's always great.
I usually always call my sister and I'm like, man, we had such a good conversation, and then we start talking.
Yeah. So right now, just off camera, we were talking about past relationships that we've had where complete opposites in the sense of what is our norm when it comes to a chaos environment for some, a peaceful, calm environment for others, maybe something in between. One of my long-term relationships, I used to always say and worry that we wouldn't be able to be sustainable long-term because she literally couldn't relate to me at all. Yeah. Whether it was from like growing up without a father, the chaos in my homes, plural, that was, I'm very used to and comfortable in conflict.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I've seen some wild stuff that I consider wild, which most people would consider crazy as hell. Right. You know? And so, and then on the opposite side of things, I used to tell her, I'm like, you lived on like the yellow brick road. Yeah. Like the red carpet. Like, I mean, I like wish.
Super loving home.
Yeah. You know, like a fairy tale kind of. And so in times of conflict, when my inner child is coming out.
And
which
I'm lashing. In relationships, it does.
Right? Bless her heart, she just can't relate. And so I just wonder if you think it's possible that you can have a healthy, successful relationship with two opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to like upbringing and childhood, et cetera.
I do. I think you can.
Okay.
I think that's where your commitment to your work comes in, because it's almost like you're not going to allow those environments that you grew up in to lead you
right.
to not be able to be in relationships like that.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
So I grew up in a home where like it wasn't chaotic. Thankfully, I thank God for that. I truly, but at the same time, you know, I know that that's very rare. And I know that a lot of people who I've come into contact with, it's very rare for them too. However, I don't think that it's unrealistic to ask for, you know, someone who comes from like a great home, but at the same time, not everybody does. So you have to take that into consideration because I mean, really, we're all trauma filled human beings, in some way, you know, in some way, shape or form. And I think, again, your commitment, it's almost like your commitment to not staying in that environment, even in general, because you're always going to look for that chaos. And even if it's not in your, absolutely, because it stems from your childhood. We were talking about that too, but it's like that emotional, you're addicted to that, like that chaotic environment. And when things are like kind of not chaotic, it's a little more calm. It's like, so this is kind of boring. Like I don't want to, now I want chaos, you know? And then for someone like me, it's like, no, this is great. You know, so I think that when it comes to situations like that, you're just not committing to staying in a chaotic environment. I want to commit to a healthier environment. I want to commit to, you know, for me, I grew up in an environment where, you know, it was healthy. So like when I was in a relationship, one of my first relationships, I remember we got into our first argument and it was something so stupid. And I was like, great, this is the end. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much. Because I thought that our argument meant it was going to end because I didn't know how to do the conflict resolution thing.
Wow, so interesting.
So from the other end of the spectrum, it's like it doesn't mean that it's all like chipper and dandy, but
right.
You know, my work has been, you know, life is gonna life, and you know, conflict is gonna come up. You're gonna need to be able to get through those storms with another human being. You know, so I don't think that compatibility necessarily has to be or like equates to relatability, because if you think about it, like every human is complex. Like we have so many different things that make up who we are. So I think again, that's just where your work comes in, and like also the lack of work that you have done will come in as well too.
It'll show up.
It will everywhere, and not even just in your relationships, in your friendships, with your children, in every area of your life.
100%. That was your whole social clip, by the way. Bravo. That was so good. Yeah, gems. Life is gonna life.
Life is gonna life.
Put that on a t-shirt. That's really good.
Life be lifing.
I like that. Life be lifing. And so I remember when we talked about this, and I said, you know, unfortunately for the ones who are used to chaos, the word comfortable is very important for that.
Okay.
The brain is always searching for comfort and safety at all times.
Always.
Even if something is chaotic, even if something is abusive, if it happens over and over for a certain period of time, you actually normalize it and you become comfortable with it. Even though you know you should.
It's your home base.
It's your home base.
It's your home base.
Even though you know you should leave, even though you know you deserve better, even though everyone's telling you both. It's comfortable.
It actually sits in your nervous system.
Yeah,
it does.
It's
like
real.
And it stems from your childhood, because obviously like you're a sponge when you're a child. So you're soaking in the environment that you grew up in. And if it was chaotic, you grow into this adult that inner child is looking, where can I find this chaos? Where can I find this chaos? Like unconsciously.
Exactly.
And I think that a lot of people miss that aspect of, like, you're really trying to undo like generations of trauma, literally so much. That's what the work is. But it sounds scary because it's like, it sounds like so much work. Like, why not find somebody who can just deal with me, you know? But at the end of the day, can you even deal with yourself?
I was gonna say,
really.
Exactly. I had an episode last season where the guest asked, would you marry you? Tough, right? Would you marry you? So, you know,
ask me in like 20 minutes.
Exactly. Right. So it's, you know, but again, back to that comfort, you know, for a lot of people who can relate to that, it's tough because it's wild when you think about it, but you're like, the idea of the unknown is more scary than what I'm currently going through. That's what it comes down to. The idea of taking that risk of either being alone, what a lot of people can't do, the idea of me going out here and hoping someone accepts me for all that I am, flaws, pros, cons, all the above. I'm in the work, etc. So I'd rather just stay here because it's what I've known. It's what I've come to know. It's what is comfortable for me. So it's really tough to, you know, it's not a light switch, right? We can just turn it on and off. But
the work, the reward,
is
just, it blissful. Like it's so you get to unlock these like experiences and these versions of you and versions of other people, and you start attracting like just so much greatness into your life. I can't even put words on it.
No,
like it's just
you said it better than me.
It's
because I am.
I feel like I didn't even like touch the surface, honestly, because and that's why I feel like I personally have been so committed to it, because I've been able to reap the benefits in some ways, and I'm still working, you know, still healing in some ways.
Sure.
But I feel like if people were to know that, it's almost like, I mean, we can't see heaven, but I'm sure it's great, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But again, that's a reference point. You know, your reference point is you've had the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Exactly.
But you've seen all the above to know, like, look, there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely.
There are better days ahead, etc. So it's worth the work for sure. I'll say that. And it's also, it's worth the risk.
It is worth the risk. Please take the risk.
It is worth the risk.
Please take the risk.
So one of the things that, you know, I know we've talked about before, when it comes to back to dating, you know, for potential and staying in a relationship for potential, the one major con in that is you hinder your growth. And you just feed the things that you need to work on over and over and over. And I'll also say this too, you know, for the women who want to change their man, I'll just go back to that for a second, 'cause something came to mind. If you can, it's only gonna bode really badly for you.
Right. Or just one person in general.
Yeah. Right. Because he then could take, you know, let's say he's this newfound him based on your guidance.
Sure.
Okay. He can only sustain that for so long. Right. The act of it.
The act of it. Right.
And I would guess the first person he's going to go to when he comes back to normal is you. And it's probably not going to be good. There's going to be resentment, anger. I'm only doing this because you said, I'm only, you know, you threatened to leave, right? So the intention is not,
did to me.
Right. The intention behind why the change is not going to be there.
Right.
So again, the just full circle here, you know, to say this is the main point is like the hindering of the growth. It's extremely important.
It is. It's something that I think a lot of people should pay attention to.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we get into relationships and we think a lot about the other person because we're infatuated by them. Why not?
Sure.
Especially in the beginning, you know, why not?
Yeah.
But also you have to think about like, how is this person forcing me to grow, or like even unintentionally like making me grow, and who is this who am I growing into with this person, you know? And a lot of times we don't see how it could potentially be hindering us from whoever we want to be. But that's why it's important to go in with the awareness of who am I?
Right.
Where do I want to go? You know, but also not approaching dating as far as like, this is a person who needs to be, you know, I want this specific image, or, you know, not fitting in a box, you know, but also just paying attention to the type of partnership that I know that I want is someone who unintentionally wants me to be a better woman because of who he is,
right?
You know, not necessarily because I sparked that inside of him or something. Or vice versa.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah. And then the other thing we were just talking about right now was the, as I forgot. What the hell? What was the second?
Not getting a healed version.
Yes. Is not getting the healed version if you're just bouncing from relationship to relationship, date to date, taking the same toxic you into something new, expecting different results.
That's your social cue right there.
It's not right. It's not the equation.
It's not.
That is not the equation. Yeah. No. Can you relate to that?
Absolutely.
Actually, have you been that?
I've never been the type of person to like hop in and out of it. If anything, I'm like, I got my slow jams playlist, my sad songs playlist. I have some wine. My sister's on her way over. Yeah. Things like that. I need my time. That's me personally. But I know that about myself to be able to do that. Yeah. I also, I think I 100% relate to other people hopping in and out of relationships. I think that, I mean, that person isn't getting a healed version of the other person. And the thing is like, there's one aspect of it where it's like, you know, don't stop yourself from experiencing life while you're healing, while you're, you know, maybe going through a breakup or something like that. But just make sure you're giving yourself space to grieve. Like that is a loss, you know, even a loss of who maybe you thought you were going to be with this person. Then that's something to grieve too. You know, have you given yourself space to cry? Where is this pain sitting in my body? Yeah. You know, those are things that I think a lot of people avoid for obvious reasons, because it hurts. It's not fun.
Or they're just unaware of how serious to take it. Yeah.
Right. But then unfortunately, whoever the new partner is gets that unhealed version of them. And then it's like, not only is this experience so fresh and this wound is so fresh, you're coming into this relationship with all of that baggage and your trauma. So it's like just this recipe.
You're like, hey, nice to meet you.
I know, right, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just, again, the commitment to the work. You have to be committed to even coping healthily, whatever that looks like for you, you know. But I do think that when you're hopping in and out of relationships, it's just a distraction. You're just, you know, distracting yourself from feeling whatever you don't want to feel.
Yeah. And I was thinking too, you know, you're torn between these two versions of you, which is the unhealed, you know, you need to, and not just from the last relationship, but inner child, as we talked about. And then you're like on the cusp of becoming who you want to be and who you know you can be. And then right now you meet that person. Right?
Exactly.
And how difficult. That was actually me.
Really?
Like almost on the spot. It was me. Yeah.
Textbook.
And I remember telling Shay, basically saying, hi, I'm Justin. I'm under construction, but I promise I'm worth it. That was basically might as well have been my tagline.
I mean, she took it.
Because I knew it. Yeah. And I was like, look, I'm gonna be honest with you. Like I'm going through it right now.
I think there's an aspect of self-awareness though in that takes, I mean, it took you that long to get to that point, to be even able to look at yourself in the mirror like, I'm under construction, but I'm still worth it. I think that's important to know is that you can be healing, but you're still worthy. Like you're still 100% worthy of whatever love, at your worst, at your best.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
You're worthy just because.
Yeah.
It's just because.
Yeah.
I think that's super important to understand. I'm glad that you understood that though too, even in the process.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I remember the day. I remember where we were. We were in Hawaii. We were in this room. We had a like a timeshare thing, and we were in one of the bedrooms. And I had like this breakdown. And now that I think about it, this probably could have been easily a red flag.
Sure.
Like, right? I mean, we are like, we were like 3 weeks into knowing each other.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I thought you guys were like already like a couple months in.
No. I had this like breakdown on vacation, and I'll tell you why though. It was because there was a moment that we had. I've talked about it before, so everyone go back and watch. I don't remember where it was, but you know what I'm saying. We had a helicopter ride, and I was messed up, like vertigo. It was like I felt like my head was here and my body was there. I was like completely gone. Grown man being like, I wish my mom was here. That's how bad it was.
Oh my gosh.
It was really bad.
Yeah.
And the way Shay took care of me.
Oh yeah.
And then there were a couple of things along the trip that I was like, I think this is it.
Yeah.
And like I had that like, oh man,
like this is her.
This is her. This is her. And then I got scared to death.
See?
Right? And mainly, a lot of reasons, but the main one is because I knew I was like under construction. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is the right girl at the wrong time.
Did you get scared, do you think, because you thought you couldn't keep her? Or you thought you couldn't, like the woman that you envisioned her to be in your head at that time, like, what about that scared you?
I think you got it right. I think I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to keep her. And I also was afraid that once she saw my flaws and I was exposed, I wouldn't be enough for her.
It was inadequacy. Okay.
Yeah, inadequacy. Yeah. Are we on the therapist couch? Right? This is great. Shit, this is great.
Let me just write this in my notes.
No, but you know, it's thanks for asking that question because it made me think. And I think it was just like everything in my life that was good, person, material thing, experience, whatever it is, was taken away from me.
Wow. Okay.
And this person was the best thing I have found in such a long time. And I'm so afraid you will either leave me or be taken away from me. And I was like, I want to give you my all, but I'm so afraid of that, you know, the hurt. That's the ego thing, right? The control thing, but also the inner child who was abandoned, the inner child who felt alone.
Right.
You know, so I had all these things. I'm breaking down on the floor.
Yeah.
And, I mean,
I'm sure looking back now though, you see that like her getting to know that very like vulnerable Justin was what probably brought you two together the most.
It was an incredible moment. One of our like top moments ever.
Sure.
Yeah. It was beautiful.
Yeah. I was going to say that is beautiful.
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty about like real vulnerable and intimacy, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
I think it's something that, I mean, a lot of people don't get there because it's scary, you know?
Totally.
I get that though. I was wondering about the whole intimidation thing when it comes to men and women.
Yeah. And, and that's like a whole difference. I know where you were going with that too. And the intimidation thing is real. I felt like I would deserve Shay. It just was like, not now kind of thing, So that's why I was like,
you were even worried about your own potential.
100%. Yeah. Cause I knew like who I was coming to the table at that particular time was not what she deserved. Like I wasn't on that level.
Did you think that you were kind of like putting yourself like almost like overdoing to show her that you were worthy of having a woman like her?
It wasn't even there yet.
So you weren't doing anything at the time? Okay.
Not like abnormal.
Okay.
I mean, we took a trip out of the blue, which was abnormal for both of us. It was an impromptu, like random opportunity. But everything else was just me, like regular me.
That's good.
We were like too comfortable too soon. Like, I remember we were like, because it was like a timeshare. We lived together basically. Yeah. We were grocery shopping, cooking.
It was milestones.
Yeah. And I remember thinking like, well, if we could do this now,
right?
You know what I mean, it's a good sign.
You better wait.
Yeah, it's a good sign.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just that self-sabotaging / knowing that this wasn't an ideal time for me.
Sure.
But then I will say this out-of-body vulnerable interaction was definitely needed. And I'm glad it happened earlier rather than later.
So then timing necessarily isn't always important.
Yes and no. Yes and no.
Okay.
The reason why I say it is important is because I have felt this, the way I was breaking down, I have felt that for a long time. A long time. This was just the first time because I was starting to do the work and I was very raw and under construction that I was able to let it out.
Got it.
Because there was a moment where I remember thinking like, stop. And I was like, no.
Yeah.
Like the hell with that.
Right. Like never want to feel that again.
Look. Well, it was like, stop telling her all this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like close off.
Sure.
But I was like, look where that got us before.
Yeah, exactly.
How'd that work out for us?
Human beings are very like familiar. Like we're very focused on familiarity, whether we know it or not. So if there was an experience that happened before and that it wasn't safe for you to be vulnerable, your mind will literally just be like, nope, you better stop. You better stop right now.
And my last relationship was a lot of that.
Yeah. So how
how
did you come out of that then with Shay? It was just because of who she was. She made it comfortable for you to do that.
Yeah. Like Shay is like I don't even know how to describe it. And I know I have my daughter in my mind too, because she feels the same way about Shay when I'm talking about this. Like she has this angelic ability to create a space for you where you're in it and you're like, where the hell am I?
Like, how did
I've never
even
even
get
been
here?
here.
Yeah.
How'd you do this to me? It's like wild.
That's beautiful.
It is a gift to say the least. So I was in it. And then I was like, get out,
I want
get
someone
out.
who talks about me the way that Justin talks about Shay.
Yeah. I mean, it's real. It's so real, because
that's beautiful. And I think that's commendable too, because it brought you guys to where you are today.
100%. Yeah. And it continues to bring us along the ride. Because there's been other times where we've had similar situations where, again, she comes in with this gift and I'm like reminded, right? Because the inner child used to chaos, old version of me is like, oh, I guess I'm on my own then. It's me against the world. See ya. This didn't work out. I didn't sign up for this, whatever.
She comes in.
And you know what, Kate? Like a lot of times she'll leave the room. But it's like the way she left it.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? I'm just like, oh no, like I messed up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm just so blessed. But anyways, I digress. I don't know where we were, but
shout out to Shay.
Shout out to Shay.
Shout out to Shay.
Love you, honey. I don't know where the hell we were.
We were just talking about, we were initially talking about hopping in and out of relationships.
Yes. Okay. And so all that, my 2 cents on the hopping in and out is I thought up until Shay, it wasn't me, it was them. And so I would hop in. That's why I came with that equation of like, I'd take the same me into a new relationship, expecting
you said that? That
new
was your
results.
mantra?
That's like,
really?
That's an original.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because that was my life.
Okay.
So
I'm glad you knew.
Yeah. And it took my last relationship, we talked about this earlier, like the hardest ones, right? It was the worst relationship times a million ever for me. And I learned and am learning still everything from it.
Right.
Like
right.
the amount of lessons I have from that is unbelievable.
Right.
And there's the numbers like sky high. And I needed that.
Yeah, I was gonna say relationships do that. Breakups do that.
Breakups do that. Yeah.
But again,
but you got to choose that.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Sorry to cut you off.
No. I was gonna say the same exact thing. I think that's why you don't hop into another relationship, because what lessons have you been able to learn, or what have you really been able to grasp from this experience if you're not even allowing yourself to go through it, you know? And sometimes the only way out is through. So you have to get through it. So
my boy says you got to go through it to grow through it.
Yes.
Gotta go through it to grow through it. So well,
I know we can talk forever.
But I just appreciate your willingness to talk about this. You know, I know you use your TikTok platform, but even before on IG, you know, you would use that platform to always see your quotes, and you're always, glass half full, positive, thinking forward, taking accountability and responsibility, willing to put the work in, willing to hold space for people who are also willing to put the work in.
Absolutely.
So it's super dope. We need more like you.
Thank you.
And so I want to end with, I have 3 questions. And the show is all about people discovering their higher self through adversity, vulnerability, and self-love. As we kind of really touched on all that today beautifully.
Yeah.
So 3 questions, all in each department.
Okay.
First question is, when was the last adversity moment that you had, and how did it affect you?
Last adversity moment I had was a breakup. And how did it affect me, or what did it teach me?
Maybe, both. Sure.
I know for sure it kind of catapulted me into this version that I didn't even know I was capable of. So I feel like I always said I did everything right, so it hurt me that it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to.
Right.
But I mean, I just learned a lot about how sometimes it doesn't matter why it happened. It just matters that it happened. And it matters that, like, you have this wound, and how are you going to be able to heal it without distracting yourself out of it, without, forcing yourself into another experience, without allowing yourself to really dig deep and still find the fact that, like, there were great things, there were bad things, and then, you're able to still be worthy and still be loved.
Sure.
I think that those are some of the most important lessons I think that I learned about myself through it. And then also not having animosity towards the situation or the person. I really don't think that'll ever change. So I'm thankful that I'm in a space where I really don't hold hate in my heart at all. I always say wish people well and mean it. Yeah. And I do. So
that's beautiful, because the older we get, the easier it is to have it. Because you're like, this time is more valuable than ever.
Absolutely.
Like, you're 21 is different.
Older, right? Exactly. Exactly.
But here we are.
But
okay. Next question. When was the last time you were vulnerable, and what was the outcome?
Last time I was vulnerable. I think today.
Okay.
Yeah, talking about my domestic violence relationship a little bit more in detail. I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to talk about. I actually came across a video, and he was a TikToker. He basically was saying, like, how willing are you to be seen? And he was saying not seen as far as, like, who attention you present.
Grabbing,
like you're looking great on Instagram, things like that. But, like, how willing are you to be seen through your work? Because a lot of times we see, like, the success. We see that, like, oh, I'm healed, quote unquote, which I don't believe in. It's a whole other conversation. But, we see that people get all these accolades, the degrees, this and that. But, like, you don't see the process to get there, you know? Right. So how willing are you to show the world, the ugliness that all of us experience, but we just don't want to talk about on a public platform. So I think that if we're able to do that in a healthy way, I always say that sometimes your experience might be someone else's survival story.
Right.
Or your survival guide might be someone else's survival. You know what I'm trying to say.
I got you. I'm picking it up.
I'm messing it up. But, if I'm able to help even at least one person, and at least one person can relate to the fact that, like, wow, I went through that too, and maybe I can do this or whatever, then I feel like I'm living in my purpose. Yeah, so for sure. I think that was the last time.
Well, on behalf of everybody and myself, I appreciate you sharing
of course.
your experience,
Thank you.
with the abuse even if it's just one person,
Sure.
you know, to your point. And it's beautiful that you're able to be in a space now where you can talk about it, right? Let's just say that too, something to celebrate. Okay, last and final question. What does Keilani admire most about Keilani?
Oh, my heart. Absolutely. I always say that my heart is my favorite thing about me, just because actually when I was leaving my domestic violence relationship, like months after I left, the one thing my dad said to me was, do not let him ruin love for you.
Right.
And that stuck
Beautiful.
with me. It's so beautiful. My dad's not a man of like a lot of words, but he said that and it stuck with me ever since.
Yeah.
And I actually operated from that mindset in every area of my life after that. And I think, you know, I still give myself the ability to love people with caution, of course, after every experience. But me being able to like have the heart that I do, love the way that I love, and even love myself the way that I've been loving other people. I've been growing into that too. And it's been just such a beautiful experience that it excites me and it makes me happy. And I really feel like the more I experience other people, the more I realize how special that is. So I would say that it's an easy answer for me.
That's beautiful. Your heart.
Thank you.
I'm sure it's a gift and a curse too.
Oh my gosh.
Whole nother story.
It's a whole other podcast.
Yeah. Well, again, I appreciate you for coming on, for the time, for the words, for the gems. Life be lifing.
Life be lifing.
It's going to stick with me.
Yes.
And yeah, we'll have to do this, do it again next time.
Absolutely. Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
again. I appreciate it. And shout out to Shay.
Shout out to Shay.